Good evening, friends. Welcome to Civil's Manthan's newspaper Manthan's program. So let's start today's newspaper analysis. Well, the first article that we have is on the first page, that is Supreme Court sets a panel to look into Jammu and Kashmir internet curbs. So how this news can be relevant for our UPSC examination? Well, we know that last year in 2019, our parliament went away with nullifying Article 370 and also Article 35A of the Indian Constitution, and later on put on many restrictions, arrest of the many leaders, restriction on the internet, and lockdown kind of situation was there in the Jammu and Kashmir. Now in this, then certain petitions are filed in the Supreme Court. Then in one of the petitions, Supreme Court decided regarding the internet suspension, that access to internet even comes under as part of the fundamental right. So one of the things that we should remember is that access to internet has been considered by the Supreme Court as the fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a), freedom of speech and expression. Also, it also comes because access to internet is very essential to pursue any business, trade or commerce. So we also have another freedom, fundamental freedom, Article 19(1)(g). So this makes access to internet as the fundamental right, as has been interpreted by the Supreme Court. Then later on, the government went ahead with removing certain parts of the restrictions on the first. It started the telephone, then it started allowing the internet on it was a cautious move by the government, and in a phased manner the restrictions were removed. So till now the government allowed the access to internet by way of 2G. As we know, the whole India gets access to internet by way of 4G, but the Jammu and Kashmir gets the 2G internet access. So this petition was there in the Supreme Court, that why not there to be 4G internet access. So regarding that, Supreme Court has taken a decision that this is to be decided. A panel has been appointed by the court. So the court has appointed the panel. This panel will be headed by the Union Home Secretary to look into the matter. So this is all what is relevant from the prelims or mains. You can just have an idea how this access to internet has become a fundamental right and what is the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. The government has put its stand that as it could lead to the or give you can say spurt in the militancy and terrorism actions in the Jammu and Kashmir. So that's why restrictions on internet is very essential as part of its program. Anyways, let's come to the next news item. Second one is that trade unions may knock at ILO's door, International Labour Organization. So why this news has come? What is the relevance of this news item? As we know, recently in this COVID lockdown, this COVID-19 situation, lockdown is there in the whole India. So the economic activities, they have taken a huge dip. Industries are shut down. Almost no economic activities are happening in the whole India. So to give a boost to the economic activities, certain states like UP, MP, Gujarat, so they have come forward to somehow suspend the labor laws. As we know, in yesterday's discussion, we have discussed that there are around 250 labor laws we have in India. So the complexity and the archaic nature of the labor laws, it has in fact taken our economic activities to the downfall. Investments, they rather prefer going to China, Vietnam, Bangladesh rather than coming to India. So this has been a long pending reform, but now in COVID-19 situation, many states, they have suspended the labor laws. Like UP has suspended the labor laws for the next 3 years, and some states have gone ahead with extending the working hours from 8 to 12 hours. So these kind of the uh, certain amendments into the labor laws has put apprehension and fear among the labor unions as well, because their main work is to protect the interests of the laborers, right? So now the trade unions, they are uh, just considering this option of knocking at the International Labour Organization's door. So this is the relevance of this. Now this article has discussed about that what could be the violation of the which conventions violation could be there as part of the ILO. Now two conventions have been given. Now ILO Convention 87, that is right to freedom of association, and ILO Convention 98, that is right to collective bargaining. So these two conventions, they are getting violated by these initiatives by these state governments against the labor laws. Now, one thing to be noted about this, these two conventions that we have, that is ILO 87 and 98, these are not ratified. These have not been ratified by the Indian government. So this is something you need to remember, you need to take care of. Then secondly, if we see about the how many, if you see ILO, there are around 8 conventions. There are 8 core fundamental conventions of ILO. Out of these 8, 6 have been ratified by India. All right. Now these, what are these 6 conventions? One of the convention is Convention Forced Labor Convention. Convention number 29. We have Convention number 105, that is Abolition of Forced Labor Convention. Then we have Convention number 100, that is Equal Remuneration Convention. Then we have also, if I remember correctly, is 138 and 182. 138 convention is regarding minimum age convention. 182 convention number is regarding worst form of child labor convention. Well, you don't need to remember all these conventions, okay? The conventions which are in news, that you can go through, that you can remember. Because if I tell you, like UPSC has also already asked these two conventions in the prelims exam. Convention number 138 and Convention number 138 and Convention number 182. They were asked by the UPSC in the prelims examination, but it was not asked in detail. It was directly asked Convention number 138 and 182. These are related to what? These are related to ILO, International Labour Organizations. So in broad way you can remember, and but the conventions which are in news, you can also remember what they deal with. So 138 deal with minimum age convention, 182 deals with worst form of child labor convention. Right. So well, India has ratified 6 conventions out of 8. These two conventions which this article mentions are Convention number 87 and 98, that is right to freedom of association and right to collective bargaining convention, that is 98. These are not ratified. Well, that's all from this particular news item. Now come to the next news, that is right to religion. Supreme Court explains reference to larger bench. Now we just discussed the background of this particular news. This is about the Sabrimala judgment of 2018. All right. So that particular judgment was decided by under the CGI Deepak Mishra. Now, and this particular verdict of Supreme Court, it allowed the entry of women in the sanctum sanctorum of Sabrimala temple in Kerala. So because earlier the entry of women in the menstrual age cycle was prohibited into the sanctum sanctorum of the Sabrimala temple, this was held unconstitutional by the Supreme Court bench. and it was headed by the Deepak Mishra, though there was one of the dissent judgment as well given by Indu Malhotra, Justice Indu Malhotra. Justice Indu Malhotra said it is not the task of Supreme Court to look into the essential religious practice. So just remember a few things about it. Then later on, a review petition was filed in the Supreme Court, and in the review petition, then at that time the justice was, the CJI was CJI Ranjan Gogoi. So CJI Ranjan Gogoi now CJI Ranjan Gogoi in while deciding over this review petition of Sabrimala judgment did not decide exactly at the time, kept on holding this, that let's wait, let's look into the larger issues. So his opinion was that the court should look into the larger issues concerning the essential religious practices of other communities as well. What are those other communities and what are those issues where the Supreme Court should look into? One is female genital mutilation by Dawoodi Bohra communities of Shia Muslims. Second one, entry of Muslim women into the mosque. Thirdly, entry of Parsi women who have married interfaith, like a Parsi woman who has married non-Parsi men. So she is prohibited to enter into the fire temple. So these are certain other issues as per say other communities, and these are larger issues which the court should look into as given by the former CJI Ranjan Gogoi. But it did not constitute a bench. He just kept on holding the issue. Then CJI S.A. Bobde constituted a 9-judge bench to hear the reference. So to hear this reference, the CJI S.A. Bobde has constituted 9-judge bench. Then later on, certain parties that raise objection. Why the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court has got a review petition, so the task of Supreme Court is to decide over the review petition, whether to allow or not allow, to decide in favor or decide against. Now it is going into looking into those matters which are not before the Supreme Court at this time, right? So they raise certain questions. One question: how a bench sitting in a limited review petition jurisdiction, how it assume powers to decide over other questions of law. Then it says Gogoi bench should have decided the Sabrimala review petition first before referring to such kind of questions. So these were certain objections that were raised by certain parties before the Supreme Court. Now the context is, now Supreme Court has given the justification of this, that Supreme Court can take untrampled powers to take up any cause to do complete justice. So Supreme Court can do so as per under Article 142 of the Indian Constitution, that is complete justice. So this is the argument of the Supreme Court, and it has dismissed the objections. So now the 9-judge bench that CJI S.A. Bobde has constituted will hear the larger issues of these communities as well, along with the review petition of Sabrimala temple. That's all from this particular news item. Now let's come to the next one. Next is Nepal summons Indian envoy over border row. What this border row is? Basically, recently a link road has been inaugurated by our defense minister, and this link road is basically to facilitate Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. So till now we have the route to Kailash Mansarovar. One is through Nepal, one is through Sikkim. So here you can see Nathula Pass. So the existing route goes through the Nathula Pass, then goes through the Mount Kailash. So Mount Kailash, a body of Lord Shiva. Another route is also through Uttarakhand, passing through the Lipu Lake Pass and then to the Mount Kailash. But a huge section of in the Uttarakhand region was not, you can say, built on road. So it was off-road kind of situations, and it was a very rough terrain. So it was very rough terrain, very tough route was there, and it was a lot of hurdles the pilgrims they had to face in this way. Now this link road is basically, you can see here the link road, this green region that shows the link road, that is connecting and taking the pilgrimage will till the Lipu Lake Pass. Lipu Lake Pass, it will help in pass through the Indo-China border, and so Lipu Lake Pass is on the tri-junction, you can say, of India, China and Nepal. All right. So why China has raised the objection? Well, this pass passes through the Kalapani region. Now Kalapani region, Nepal claims it, and it is a part of disputed territory. Nepal claims it, India claims it, right? So Nepal has raised the objection that it is breach of the sovereignty of the Nepal, and there have been protests in Nepal as well regarding this issue. So the question can be, you can just remember from the mapping based question can be there, Kalapani is where, between two which countries it is under dispute, or like this way you can say the question can be asked. Lipu Lake Pass. So this particular link road will help in reducing the journey of this Kailash Mansarovar around 6 hours or say. It is more than so, I believe, around 6 days, I believe, right? So more than 6 days pilgrimage time would be saved by this way. Now let's come to the next article, that is Arogya Setu data protocol norms issued. Now we all know Arogya Setu app. This app basically helps us, it tracks the COVID-19 positive patients, and it also helps other people as well, whether they have come in contact or come around those areas where COVID-19 positive people could be there. So certain data is being accessed by the Arogya Setu, location, right, traveling history and all these things. So what are the protocols that have to be maintained, right? So now the protocols have been issued. Now these guidelines, they say, they talk about the collection, processing, storage and sharing of the data accessed by the way of Arogya Setu. So here we can say there are 3 dimensions of this. It says normally what are the data that is in the encrypted form in the people's handsets, that will be automatically deleted in 30 days. But people who have undergone the test, for those the data will be kept for 45 days, and for people who are COVID positive, the data will be kept for 60 days from the time of the illness. So this is the time frame, the guidelines that are protocols that have been formed. Secondly, as government is using this Arogya Setu app, basically deciding how the government response would be there, state response, district administration response, in designating the hotspots, in having a more efficient response to counter the COVID situation. So we can also see here that what are the period, that is, unless a specific recommendation to this effect is made, will not ordinarily extend beyond 180 days. So under no circumstances it will go beyond under 180 days unless it is being amended in a later point of time, and after that it will be permanently deleted. Moreover, the demographic data of an individual which is collected by the National Informatics Center, it will be retained for as long as the protocol remains in force, this protocol that we have talked about, right? Or if the individual requests that it be deleted for a maximum of 30 days from such request. So if you request for your deletion of your data, so that will be deleted within 30 days of your request. So this is all about the protocols regarding the Arogya Setu data collection, processing, storage, sharing. All these norms are given here. So that's all from this. Now let's come to the next article. This is from the economy section of today's The Hindu. Mandis linked to e-platform see 65% rise in count post-lockdown. So what this e-platform is? This e-platform is e-NAM basically. What is e-NAM? Electronic National Agriculture Market. So this is in fact to make our country one nation, one agriculture market. So there is supposed to be one agriculture market in the whole India to integrate all the other agriculture markets, mandis that we have in our country. So just give you the background, there are more than 6,000-7,000 market yards, sub yards. These mandis are there all over in our country, and they are being regulated by the APMC Acts. APMC Acts of the respective state governments. Now, as agriculture comes under the state list, so the states, they have framed their own APMC Acts. And what does this APMC Act does? This APMC Act makes it mandatory for the first sale of the agriculture produce to be made into those mandis, these markets, agriculture markets that we have. So it is mandatory for the farmers to come to the markets, to those mandis, and to sell those first produce into those mandis by way of commission agents. Now it has increased the prices. One of the drawback we can see, it has bring in a level of middlemen as well, right? So increase the prices. This can be, moreover, the price discovery is not uniform all across the country, and the farmers, they're not able to get the appropriate prices for their crops, right? Exploitation of farmers also happen in those market yards and sub yards as well. So just to there is price distortion as well in the whole country regarding the agriculture commodities. So to help and to bring reforms in market reforms in Indian agriculture, the government started the e-NAM, National Agriculture Market. So this is by electronically all these markets, they are being interlinked. But what was the issue? That many of the markets, they were not coming to join it. Many of the states, they were not coming to join the e-NAMs. So around 500 to 600 mandis, they had joined e-NAM. But now post COVID situation, lockdown is there, social distancing norm has to be maintained, right? And it will be very difficult for farmers to go out and sell their crops into the mandis because of the lockdown situation. So it has in fact helped more mandis to get interlinked, get connected to the e-NAM platform. Farmers are getting benefited. Even FPOs, farmer producer organizations, these FPOs, they are also getting registered with the e-NAM. So what it will do, it will help in, you can say, strengthening our supply chain. It will help in better price discovery, right? So this will make, in fact, it will help in better price discovery. It will help in reducing the crop losses by way of strengthening the supply chain. So that's all from this particular article. Just remember one thing, like how this lockdown situation has helped getting more markets to get integrated with the e-NAM platform. This e-NAM platform is maintained by Small Farmers Agriculture Consortium. So you can remember this as well. SFAC, Small Farmers Agriculture Consortium, is that maintains e-NAM. Next topic from economy part is bond yields rise as government expands borrowing plan. So well, the government, as we can see in the COVID situation, economic activities are not happening, and the government has to spend a lot. The government revenues have plummeted, but on the other hand, the expenditure has risen from the government as people are not getting employment. So how the government? So the government has to raise its expenditure. Now, the earlier borrowing cannot meet up the expenditure plans of the present situation. So the government has expanded the borrowing plan. Earlier it was estimated to be around 7 to 8 lakh crore. Now it has been increased to 12 lakh crore. So now as the borrowing is to be increased, the bond yields, it has risen. Now, the question won't come as directly from this. You just need to understand the concept of bond yield, how the bond yield that fluctuates, goes up, goes down, and what does it has on the, it has relevance effect on the prices of the bond prices, rate of interest as well, right? So these things you should understand as part of the economic concept. So there are 2-3 points. One is bond price, 2-3 terms you need to remember. Then there is coupon or rate of interest, bond yield, and how they are interlinked and how they are related to the economic health of the country. Well, these bonds are basically government bonds we are talking about, or GSEC, government securities to be precise. Well, in the bond market, you see, initially a bond is sold by the government, right? And any of the person or so they when the government issues the bonds, and whoever subscribes to those bonds, so the person who subscribes to the bond, those are the investors, right? So those investors, they invest in these bonds. So initially they buy the bonds at a particular face value. So that is the face value of the bond at which the bond is being bought, and that is bought at a particular coupon, particular rate of interest that is to be provided by the government or whosoever issues the bond in a broader sense. But here we are talking about the government bonds basically. So that coupon or rate of interest will be provided as part of the, you can say, returns for the person who has invested in those bonds. All right. So, and after the maturity of the bonds, say for example, it's a 3-year maturity period or 5-year maturity bond. So after 5-year or 3-year, the whole face value will be given to the particular investor who has invested in the bond. And till that time, every year the person will get the coupon or the interest basically every year. And at the end of the maturity, the whole principal amount or the face value, the amount will be given to the investor. So this is how the bond market functions. Now once the person who buys the bond, now he or she can sell the bond in the bond market. So it means what? When the government sells the bonds to anybody, the person who subscribes to the bond or who buys that bond can further trade the bond in the bond market. So it means the price of the bond then will vary as per demand and supply of the bond. And the demand and supply of the government bond will depend upon what? The demand and supply of the bond will depend upon the economic health of the country, right? So this is how it is, they are interlinked. Now let's further understand a few things about it. For instance, initially the bond price was, say, initially the face value, for example, for the bond was rupees 100. For example, for you subscribe to a government bond at rupees 100, and you are given a particular rate of interest that is any way what it could be 5%, 6%, or 4, 5, say 6 to 7%, for example. Now, once you sell this bond, now when more and more people they sell the bond, it means supply of the bond is more, right? When many more and more people they sell the bond, when supply of the bond is more, and when supply is more than the demand of the bonds, it means what? The other person won't buy this bond at rupees 100, right? And for example, this bond is bought by other person at for so because the person will see the economic situation in the country, right? Now how the yield is being calculated? The yield is calculated in fact by way of coupon divided by the value of the bond multiplied by 100 as way of we calculate the percentage. Bond yield is in terms of we calculate the percentage. So this is the same way as the rate of interest, you can say. So bond yield is linked to the coupon or rate of interest. More is the rate of interest, it means how much interest the person has earned is same as the bond yield. So bond price and bond yield or coupon or rate of interest, these are inversely proportional. All right, so this is the concept that you need to remember, that bond price, this is inversely proportional to the rate of interest or bond yield. How? For instance, if the face value of the bond, for instance, the price of the bond, it falls to rupees 100, for example, right? So the yield would rise, isn't it? Because at the end of the, you can say, maturity period of say 5 years, the person would get rupees 100. So in fact, the yield has risen, the bond yield has risen, so the rate of interest will rise. So when bond price is declining, the rate of interest is rising, because here we are saying what? Because these bonds are being kept, they are being traded, they are being bought and sold in the market. So here we are talking about the bond that you have sold. So what other person, what is the prospects of other person who has subscribed to your bond, the bond that you have sold, right? So here we are talking in that respect. So in respect of the person who has subscribed to the bond as a new subscriber. And for example, if you take another example, say if the bond value rises to say rupees 120, right? Now if the bond value rises to 120, but at the end of the 5 years, the person is to get the bond, so the principal amount is rupees 100 only, isn't it? The only benefit that he would get is in terms of the rate of interest, that's it. So here the rate of interest will decline, because here we will calculate the rate of interest in terms of this new price. If the bond price is 120, the rate of interest will decline. Here it will come around say 5 to 6%. And here if it comes to 80, rupees 80, it will come say some around 8 to 9%. You can calculate by this formula as well. So just remember this thing, that bond price is inversely proportional to the rate of interest or the bond yield. And how they are linked to the health of the economy of a country, because if say more and more borrowing is to happen, more fiscal deficit would be there, right? So these macroeconomic parameters, the fundamentals, they would deteriorate, and it can also degrade the credit rating of the country as well. So all these things are basically indicating what? They indicates that health of the economy is declining. Economy is in bad shape. So when economy is in bad shape, the price, the supply of the bond, government bonds will be more. When supply of the government bonds is more, the price, you can say the rate of interest or the bond yield will decline. And how the bond yield will decline? When the bond price will rise, right? When bond prices rises to 120, then the bond yield declines, because ultimately it is to be the face value is rupees 100 only for the bond. So that's all for today's discussion of newspaper Manthan of Civils Manthan. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel, share and press the bell icon. Thank you. Thanks a lot.